Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupagada Mayam Dadati Swabhadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Jutapalakamalam Sri Guruna Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganathan Vitantam Sajivam Vadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Srila Shakanvitanscha He Krishna Koruna Sindho Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Bhakta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapachubhascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda
Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So today is Thursday, October 2nd, 2025. And on the lunar calendar, today is the Dasami. The Dasami, the 10th day of the moon. Mars Ekadashi, 11th day of the moon. We all know what that means. And so today is the Ramachandra Vijayotsava, the conquering of Lord Rama over Ravana, which all the Nepalis were celebrating yesterday, wrong day, because they following the India calendar probably, but it's actually today. And it's also the appearance of Shripad Madhvacharya, the great Vaishnava Acharya, whose picture we see here, and he is presenting his commentary to Srila Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedas. So Vyasadeva was present and active 5,000 years ago during the time of Lord Krishna. There's a great narration of his pastimes and various activities of his life in the Mahabharata, of which he is the author. And he's also the author of the four Vedas and their sub-branches and the Puranas and the Itihasas. The Itihasas are called histories, and the word Purana means very old. So, and amongst the Puranas, the most important Purana is what? Bhagavat Purana, the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's why we study Srimad Bhagavatam and read it every day. And you can say that was Srila Prabhupada's masterpiece, his literary masterpiece, was the rendering of the Srimad Bhagavatam into English, which he did not finish, but he translated up to the 10th canto, 13th chapter. But beginning in 1969 and then 1970, he gave his summary study of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, which is the Krishna book, and it contains all the 90 chapters of the 10th canto. There are 90 chapters in the Krishna book. So each chapter has its corresponding chapter in the Dashamashkanda, the 10th canto. So Madhavinda Puri is a very important personality in the history of Vaishnavism. So we're going to read a verse from the Madhya Lila of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrta. Chapter 9 of the Madhya Lila is entitled Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Travels to the Holy Places. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was going on Padayatra. Pada means foot, and yatra means journey. So he spent a number of years on foot traveling throughout the subcontinent of India, preaching Krishna consciousness, encountering various personalities. So in text number 245 of the Madhya Lila, chapter 9, we find this verse. Madhvacharya stane ailayan hatatvavadi udupi Krishna deki tahan haila premon madi. Translation. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu next arrived at Udupi, the place of Madhvacharya, where the philosophers known as Tattvavadis resided. There he saw the deity of Lord Krishna and became mad with ecstasy. And now there's a very extensive purport which gives a penetrating look into the life of Madhvacharya. So we'll read this. The Sripad Madhvacharya took his birth near Udupi, which is situated in the South Kannada district of South India, just west of Sayadri. This is the chief city of the South Kannada province and is near the city of Mangalore, which is situated to the south of Udupi. Near the city of Udupi is a place called Bajaka Kshetra, where Madhvacharya took his birth in a Shivali Brahmin dynasty as the son of Madhya Gehabhat in the year 1040 Shakabda, which corresponds to 1118 Anno Domino, or as the modern scholars say, CE, the Common Era. In his childhood, now this part of India, Udupi, it's on the west coast of India, right next to the ocean. So the ocean plays a part in the pastimes of Madhvacharya, as we're going to see. In his childhood, Madhvacharya was known as Vasudev, and there are some wonderful stories surrounding him. It is said that once, when his father had piled up many debts, Madhvacharya converted tamarind seeds into actual coins to pay them off. So he transformed the tamarind seeds into gold coins, much to the astonishment of his family, and was able to pay off the debts of his father. When he was 5 years old, he was offered the sacred thread. You can see he's a very progressive individual. Quite early in life, took his Upajjhaya Brahmin initiation at age 5. A demon named Maniman lived near his abode in the form of a snake. And at the age of 5, Madhvacharya killed that snake with the toe of his left foot. So imagine our little Parikshit killing a big snake with his little toe of his left foot. It would be quite astonishing. When his mother was very much disturbed, she would call his name. He would appear before her in one jump. So he's playing at some distance away and fly through the air and land there in one jump. Who does that remind you of? Hanuman.
Yeah.
Who could do that? So why could Madhvacharya do that? Well, he wrote in his own writings that he was the incarnation of Vayu. So Hanuman is also an incarnation of Vayu. Vayu means the demigod in charge of the wind. So he can fly like the wind. Very like Superman, you know. It's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman. So he can fly through the sky, which Hanuman did at different times also. So not everyone believed him, but he was Vayu. And so he's an extraordinary demigod. And says here, he was a great scholar, even in childhood. And although his father did not agree, he accepted sannyas at the age of 12. Upon receiving sannyas from Achyuta Preksha, he received the name Purna Pragya Tirtha. Of course, we can think of someone else who took sannyas at a very early age. Shankaracharya, he was 8. Where do you find people like this? Where are they all now? Where have they gone? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur and the spiritual master of Srila Prabhupada, by the time he was 7, he had memorized the entire Bhagavad Gita. And not only had he could recite the whole Gita from memory, of course, he was possessed of an eidetic memory. Everything he ever read, he remembered. Even when he was in his elderly years, he could remember verbatim every passage he had ever read. And he read a lot. Actually, at one point in his career, when he was young, before he began his preaching mission, he was hired to be the court pandit for one king, and specifically to tutor the princes, the sons of the king, and give them spiritual as well as material education. And this king happened to have in his court a very vast library of books in English and Sanskrit and Bengali. So while he was engaged in that occupation, he read every single book in that king's library. And he could quote every word, every line from every book by memory, like without even trying. Not like, I try to remember a verse. What's the first line of that verse? Turn. No. Boom. It's called eidetic memory, or photographic memory, we say in English. Actually, eidetic we say in English too. Just nobody knows that word. So after receiving sannyas from Achyuta Preksha, he received the name Purna Pragya Tirtha. Who knows what the name Purna Pragya means? Jnana means knowledge. Pragya means superior knowledge. Purna means complete. So Purna Pragya means possessed of complete superior knowledge. So obviously he gave him that name because of his great learning. Purna Pragya Tirtha. After traveling all over India, he finally discussed scriptures with Vidya Shankara, the exalted leader of Sringeri Math. The Sringeri Math is the principal monastery of Shankaracharya. He has 4 monasteries. There's one in Puri, one in Dwarka. Sringeri Math is the home base, the mother Mata in South India. And so the Vidya Shankara, the Acharya, the current Acharya, at whatever time and whoever that may be, is always called Shankaracharya. In this case, it was Vidya Shankara, was the head of the Sringeri Math. Prabhupada calls him the exalted leader of Sringeri Math. And they debated, because Madhya, his mission was to defeat the Mayavadi philosophy of Shankaracharya. That was his mission. That was his passion that he carried out very forcefully. And he preached all over India and became extremely famous. Vidyashankara was actually diminished in the presence of Madhvacharya. That's another way of saying that he was defeated by Madhvacharya. Accompanied by Satyatirtha, one of his disciples, Madhvacharya went to Badrik Ashrama. Badrik Ashrama is situated up in the Himalayas. And it is such a place that during the winter time, no one is there because it's covered with snow and ice, ostensibly. But there's another level of reality there. And Srila Vyasadeva lives there in Badrik Ashram, although he's generally not visible to ordinary people. But Madhvacharya is not ordinary dude by any stretch. So it was there in Badrik Ashrama that he met Vyasadeva and explained his commentary on Bhagavad Gita before him. And that's this picture here. He's got his commentary there, and he's giving his commentary, presenting it to the master, Srila Vyasadeva, who's the literary incarnation of God, who's the author of the Mahabharata. Does that fly come every Thursday? It's that same fly.
Is he trying to hear?
Yeah. No. Prabhupada said the king is sitting on the throne. The mosquito is also there. The mosquito is not the king, he is just biting. So, the fly is not giving the class, he's disturbing. Thus, he became a great scholar by studying before Vyasadeva. So Madhvacharya was a very prolific writer. And he wrote many commentaries on various Upanishads. He wrote, of course, his commentary on the Gita, as we just heard and we see in this picture. And he also wrote an important commentary on the Srimad Bhagavatam, on the Bhagavad Purana. And sometimes Prabhupada in his purports will quote from Madhvacharya's, or he'll make reference to the commentary of Madhvacharya. Madhvacharya says this, Madhvacharya says that in different places. So he's one of the important commentators on the Bhagavatam. So he's a great Vaishnava Acharya, no doubt. And he's the principal Acharya with the potency and the intense desire to defeat the Sharirika Bhashya commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. And Madhvacharya also wrote his own commentary on the Vedanta Sutra, also known as the Brahma Sutras. So we'll continue with this narration. By the time he came to Anandamath from Badrik Ashram, Madhvacharya had finished his commentary on Bhagavad Gita. His companion Satyatirtha wrote down the entire commentary. When Madhvacharya returned from Badrik Ashram, he went to Ganjama, which is on the bank of the river Godavari. Have we heard of the river Godavari before? It's one of the holy rivers of India. And it was on the banks of the Godavari River that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu first met with Ramananda Roy. And that pastime is contained also in the Madhya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrta. You familiar with that pastime? So Lord Chaitanya is residing in Jagannath Puri, and he wanted to go on his tour of South India. And so what's his name? Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the Pandit in the court of the king of Puri, and the greatest Mayavadi philosopher in India at that time, was converted from a Mayavadi to a Vaishnava by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sarvabhauma was quite a bit senior to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who, when Lord Chaitanya arrived in Jagannath Puri, he had just taken sannyas, and he was 24 years old. So Sarvabhauma took a fatherly interest in him, and he said, you are a young man and extremely handsome. Lord Chaitanya is very beautiful, as we know. He's Krishna. Who's more beautiful than Krishna? But he's Krishna covered with the mood, sentiment, and complexion of Srimati Radharani. So he's as good as it gets. You will not find a better looking personality than Lord Chaitanya. Extremely beautiful. He's the Lord himself. So Sarvabhauma's thinking, here's a young sannyasi. Generally sannyasis are old men. They take sannyas at the end of life or after retirement. So in order for you to remain fixed up in your vows of sannyas, you must hear Vedanta Sutra from me. So he was thinking that he was superior to Lord Chaitanya. And Lord Chaitanya adopted a very humble mood. And he said, all right, I will hear Vedanta from you. So Sarvabhauma began to instruct him in the Sharirika Bhashya, impersonal commentary, Mayavadi commentary of Vedanta Sutra. And Lord Chaitanya sat there impassively for 7 days while Sarvabhauma was giving his explanations. And finally Sarvabhauma said, well, you've been sitting here for 7 days hearing, and you haven't said a word. And Lord Chaitanya was impassive the whole time, showing no emotion. He said, Sarvabhauma said, have you understood what I have said? You haven't shown any sign, you haven't asked any question. And then finally, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after 7 days, broke his silence. He said, I understand Vedanta Sutra perfectly, but the nonsense that you were spouting, I cannot understand anything of that. And Sarvabhauma was like, what? There's the great master being challenged and ultimately defeated by the student. Lord Chaitanya said, the meaning of Vedanta Sutra is perfectly clear, like the sunshine. But you are trying to cover that sunshine with the clouds of your bogus interpretations. And Sarvabhauma was really blown out by that. And he said, well then, what is the understanding of Vedanta Sutra, if you think you know so much? And then Lord Chaitanya began to explain Vedanta Sutra. And what is the commentary on Vedanta Sutra by the author Vyasadeva? Srimad Bhagavatam. So he began to explain Vedanta Sutra in terms of Srimad Bhagavatam. And Sarvabhauma was stunned by the depth of his explanation, by the scholarly brilliance, by the perceptive and penetrating intellectual considerations. And he was so stunned that he couldn't refute Lord Chaitanya's explanation. He was defeated. It's like his heart cracked. And Chaitanya Charitamrta says that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya was a dry speculator. He's so dry that he's compared to oil cakes, the type of cake that's made with oil. Like cake is made with oil, right? Butter or something, oil. But he was like an oil cake by which all the oil has been extracted, it's been pressed out, and nothing left but dry. Like imagine a cake that's just dry flour. When you give someone, here's some dry flour. Like, no thanks. Get that out of my face. It's dry flour. So he was so dry, no rasa in his heart, that he was like dry oil cakes from which all the oil has been pressed out. So, and it was like his intelligence was blocked. He couldn't utter a word. He couldn't say anything. And he realized he had been utterly dismantled and defeated by Lord Chaitanya, who also appears in the disciplic succession of Madhvacharya, by the way. And that means that we also are coming in that disciplic succession. We're called the Madhva Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. So, similarly, Madhvacharya had defeated this Vidya Shankar of the Sringeri Math in South India. But when he came back from Bhadrika Ashram after presenting his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita to Srila Vyasadeva, he met with these two learned scholars named Shobhana Bhatt and Swami Shastri. Later, he debated with them and he defeated them, and they became his disciples. And they were already well known as great scholars. And they became known in the disciplic succession of Madhvacharya as Padmanabha Tirtha and Narahari Tirtha. When he returned to Udupi, he would sometimes bathe in the ocean. Remember, this is South India on the western coast of India. So, the Arabian Sea is there. On one such occasion, he composed a prayer in 5 chapters. Once, while sitting beside the sea, engrossed in meditation upon Lord Sri Krishna, he saw that a large boat containing goods for Dwarka was in danger. He gave some signs by which the boat could approach the shore, and it was saved. Apparently there was a big sandbar there, and the boat was getting stuck in the sandbar. And Madhvacharya gave some sign language from the shore to the captain of the boat so that he could become free from the sandbar and make a proper landing. And it was saved. The owners of the boat wanted to give him a present. And at that time, Madhvacharya agreed to take some Gopi Chandan. Gopi Chandan is what? It's tilak, the lumps of clay that we use to make our tilak. It's called Gopi Chandan. He received a big lump of Gopi Chandan, and as it was being brought to him, it broke apart and revealed a large deity of Lord Krishna. The deity had a stick in one hand, like a cowherd boy stick, and a lump of food in the other. As soon as Madhvacharya received the deity of Krishna in this way, he composed a prayer. The deity was so heavy that not even 30 people could lift it. Yet Madhvacharya personally brought this deity to Udupi. Remember, he was extremely powerful physically. Tall, strong, handsome, super intelligent. He's demigod Vayu, great devotee of the Lord. So he was so strong that he could carry that deity by himself, even though a bunch of men together couldn't carry it. 8 of Madhvacharya's sannyas disciples became directors of his 8 monasteries. So he established 8 monasteries or mats. Worship of Lord Krishna deity is still going on in Udupi, according to the plans Madhvacharya established. So you go to Udupi today, some, almost 1,000 years later, and that deity, Udupi Krishna, is still there, being worshipped by the followers of Madhvacharya, who are known as the Tattvavadis. Madhvacharya then for the second time visited Badrik Ashram. Now we can imagine it's a very long way from the southwesternmost part of India all the way up to Badrik Ashram in the Himalayas. And he made that journey by foot, not once, but twice. He was going for a second time. While he was passing through Maharashtra, the local king was digging a big lake for the public benefit. As Madhvacharya passed through that area with his disciples, he was also obliged to help in the excavation. After some time, when Madhvacharya visited the king, he engaged the king in that work and departed with his disciples. Often in the province of Ganga Pradesh, there were fights between Hindus and Muslims. The Hindus were on one bank of the river and the Muslims on the other. Due to the community tension, no boat was available for crossing the river. The Muslim soldiers were always stopping passengers on the other side. But Madhvacharya did not care for these soldiers. Now, I have to know that during this time, this would be in the 13th century, that 12th and 13th centuries, there was the presence of the Muslim invaders who were coming from Turkey. And so they began to establish their various areas of power and ruling during this time. And so there was tension between the Hindus and the Muslims. But Madhvacharya crossed the river anyway. He didn't care about the soldiers. And when he met the soldiers on the other side, he was brought before the king. The Muslim king was so pleased with him that he wanted to give him a kingdom and some money. He was very impressed with his spiritual stature, obviously. But Madhvacharya refused. While walking on the road, he was attacked by some dacoits. So they have bands of, highwaymen or robbers on the road, and they will attack pilgrims or travelers on the road and kill them and take their possessions. But by his bodily strength, he killed them all. This is like one of those superhero movies where a bunch of guys attack one guy, and then the one guy knows the kung fu and he defeats them all. And there are all these bodies left all over the place, and he's walking away, the hero. Well, this is the actual fact. This is not a superhero movie. He was so powerful that he killed all the dacoits, and so he dispatched them. When his companion, Satyatirtha, was attacked by a tiger, Madhvacharya separated them by virtue of his great strength. You ever try to wrestle with a tiger? They're very strong. They're very powerful. They're far more powerful than a human being. And in India, the great Kshatriyas, sometimes they'll have, tiger heads or stuffed tigers mounted in their place of residence that they have killed with their bare hands or with a knife. And Srila Prabhupada, during his preaching in India, stayed at the home of one such man, a Kshatriya. And he told Prabhupada how he killed the tiger with just a knife. Fought the tiger with a knife and killed it. And he had the tiger mounted and stuff there. Prabhupada eyes got wide. He said, "Oh, very good." Prabhupada liked that. He liked that Kshatriya spirit. So Madhvacharya pulled the tiger off of his companion, Satyatirtha, and tossed the tiger off the road back into the jungle. We can imagine after that happened, that tiger took tail and ran as fast as he could. I'm not going to eat that guy. When he met Vyasadeva, he received from him the Shalagram Shila known as Astamurti. I believe they still have that Shalagram Shila there in Udupi. After this, he summarized the Mahabharata. So he did a kind of like a Krishna book version of the Mahabharata in poetic form, summarizing and Mahabharata is a very vast work. It's composed of 100,000 shlokas. The Srimad Bhagavatam is 18,000 shlokas. So we can see that, and the Mahabharata is the longest epic literary work in human society. So Madhvacharya's devotion to the Lord and his erudite scholarship became known throughout India. He became very famous as a great scholar and a great devotee. Consequently, the owners of the Sringiri Math established by Shankaracharya became a little perturbed. Like, hey, he's taken our glory, because Shankaracharya had preached throughout India and became extremely influential and prominent. He practically defeated Buddhism, and which was prominent for quite some time in India historically. But Shankaracharya and Lord Buddha had rejected the authority of the Vedas, ostensibly, in order to get his followers to quit performing animal sacrifices in the name of the Vedic tradition. And such sacrifices are actually forbidden in the age of Kali. Animal sacrifices, horse sacrifices, cow sacrifices. But they were performing these sacrifices at the time of the appearance of Lord Buddha in the name of Vedic injunctions. And so Buddha rejected the authority of the Vedas and just got his followers to follow him. And so Buddhism became patronized by one emperor at that time. I forget his name. Who knows? Ashoka. Yes, thank you. Yes, you know your Indian history. Emperor Ashoka, under his influence, he patronized the Buddhist teaching, and it became spread all over India and very prominent in Indian society. And not only that, but spread into places like Burma or Myanmar, Thailand, Vietnam, China, Japan, Afghanistan, and in many, many places in that part of the world, Buddhism became very prominent. Tibet. But Shankaracharya defeated the Buddhism and reestablished the Vedic authority, but unfortunately, he did it in a kind of a way as to establish the Mayavadi philosophy. Now we know from the Puranas, Mayavadam Ashachastram Prachchanam Bhaudam Uchate. What's the next line? Maiva Vihitam Hitan Kalo Brahmana Murtina. Lord Shiva tells Durga that in the Kali Yuga I appear as a Brahmana, Kalo Brahmana Murtina. Kalo means in the age of Kali. Mayavadam Ashachastram, but preaching this Mayavadi philosophy, which is Asat Shastra, bogus scriptures, fake scriptures. What is that, fake scripture? That is the commentary of Vedanta, the Sharirika Bhashya by Shankaracharya. Prachchanam Bodham Uchate, that this Mayavadi theory is a kind of Prachchanam Bodham. It's a covered Buddhism. And so Buddhism is what? A type of atheism, actually. The Buddhist teaching. There's no God in Buddhism. Mayavadam Ashachastram Prachanam Bodham Uchate. So he established this Maya theory, this Mayavad theory, which is still prominent in India today. And Vaishnava commentators have noted that this Mayavadi philosophy has actually contaminated the Vedic culture of India with this false interpretation of Vedanta. Because the real purport of the Vedas, as explained by Krishna in the 15th chapter, 15th verse of Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Vedaischa saver aham eva Vedya, Vedanta krit Veda Vedeva chaham. That it is by all the Vedas that I am to be known. Indeed, he says, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and the knower of Vedanta. So that's right out of the Bhagavad Gita. So you can't interpret that away, that Krishna says that. Although the Mayavadis, they always try to cover Krishna's words with various interpretations. So at that time, the followers of Shankaracharya were afraid of Madhvacharya's rising power, and they began to harass or tease Madhvacharya's disciples in many ways. There was even an attempt to prove that the disciplic succession of Madhvacharya was not in line with Vedic principles. A person named Pundarik Puri, a follower of the Mayavadi philosophy of Shankaracharya, came before Madhvacharya to discuss the Shastras. And then all of Madhvacharya's books were stolen. And Madhvacharya, as far as all his writings were concerned, he did not want them distributed widely, but only to his followers. But later they were found with the help of King Jayasingha, the ruler of Kumla. In discussion, Pundarik Puri was defeated by Madhvacharya. A great personality named Trivikramacharya, who was a resident of Vishnu Mangala, also there in South India, became Madhvacharya's disciple. And his son later became Narayana Acharya, the composer of the Sri Madhva Vijay, which is both a biographical work of Madhvacharya by the son of his disciple, Narayanacharya, and a philosophical work. After the death of Trivikramacharya, the younger brother of Narayanacharya, took sannyas and later became known as Vishnu Tirtha. That is one of the personalities in the disciplic succession of Madhvacharya. So it was reputed that there was no limit to the bodily strength of Madhvacharya, Purna Pragya. There was a person named Kandan Jati who was famed for possessing the strength of 30 men. Madhvacharya placed the big toe of his foot upon the ground and asked the man to separate it from the ground. So this is the challenge. He put his foot down, you lift my foot off the ground. But the great strong man could not do so, even after great effort. So the famous strong guy, Madhvacharya was stronger than him. He couldn't even move his big toe. Srila Madhvacharya passed from this material world at the age of 80 while writing a commentary on the Attareya Upanishad. For further information about Madhvacharya, one should read Madhva Vijay by Narayanacharya, which I wish I had that book in English. So this purport goes on to talk about the different centers of Madhvacharya, the different matas that he established and their temple commanders. And here's a list of the disciplic succession of Madhvacharya. Hamsa Paramatma, that's the Supreme Lord in his Hamsa incarnation. 2, Chaturmukha Brahma, that's Lord Brahma, the creator of the universe. 3, Shanaka, that's Shanaka of the 4 Kumars. Durvas, Gyananidhi, Garuda Vahala, Kaivalya Tirtha, Gyanesh Tirtha, a list of names. And then Madhvacharya took sannyas from Achyuta Preksha Acharya, and then Madhvacharya appeared. Now, but also in our disciplic succession, we count Madhvacharya as the direct disciple of Srila Vyasadeva. So therefore you see in the Brahma Sampradaya, Krishna, or Hamsa Paramatma, Chaturmukha Brahma, the 4-headed Brahma, and then his disciple, Brahma's disciple, Narada Muni. And who's the disciple of Narada Muni? Srila Vyasadeva. There's that section in the 5th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam where Vyasadeva is, after he's compiled all the Vedas, he's in a somewhat unfulfilled condition. He's lamenting and he's trying to figure out why. I've done everything right. I presented all the Vedas, everything properly and perfectly. And then Narada Muni arrives on the scene, his spiritual master, and says, what is the difficulty? Why are you appearing undone, my dear Prabhu? And then Vyasadeva explains his problem. I'm feeling incomplete, so I'm lacking. I can't understand why. And then Narada Muni tells him, it's because you have failed to properly present the complete glories of the Lord. And it was after this conversation with Sri Narada Muni that Srila Vyasadeva, he went into a deep trance of meditation. And in that trance, he saw the Supreme Lord, and he saw the spiritual world, and then he saw the material energy, which was under the full control of the Lord. And then he saw the living entities who were under the control of Maya, thinking that they were products of that material energy, thinking I am this body, I am a product of Maya. And then he realized, yes, Narada Muni is correct. So then he compiled the Srimad Bhagavatam as the completion of his task of propagating Vedic knowledge. And the Srimad Bhagavatam focuses exclusively on bhakti, devotion to Krishna. This is also the point of the preaching of Madhvacharya, that the real goal of life is to have bhakti, to develop and cultivate bhakti for Vishnu or Krishna, and in this way obtain, reestablish oneself in the position of the servant of the Supreme, and to attain liberation, to go back to the spiritual world. So, and many commentators, historical commentators, say that the Madhava is a very powerful force historically in the evolution of Hinduism, as they put it, because he has revived this original spirit of bhakti that's contained there in the Vedas and in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So a person appearing in the descendant succession of Madhvacharya is Sri Madhavendra Puri. And the primary source of information in the life of Madhavendra Puri is contained in Chaitanya Charitamrta. And one of the disciples of Sri Madhavendra Puri, we read about his pastimes. He found the Gopal deity in the bushes in Vrindavan, which now resides in the temple of Nathji in Nathdwar, in the Vallabha Sampradaya. That was Madhavendra Puri's Gopal deity who revealed himself to him in a dream. And he had several dreams in which Krishna came to him. So his Gopal deity, after he had rescued him from the jungle and established him the worship on Govardhan Hill, came to him one night in a dream and said, I was in the jungle buried for so many years, and I'm still hot. I haven't cooled down from that yet. So I want you to go to Jagannath Puri and get the sandalwood there, which is controlled by the government there in Puri, the king of Puri, and bring it back to me here in Vrindavan. Well, that's a journey of 1,000 miles by foot. So Madhavendra Puri undertook that journey, and then along the way he saw the Gopinath deity in Orissa. He went to that temple and saw that they were offering this cheer, this sweet rice, in these clay pots to the deity. And he thought, oh, that is so cool. That is so wonderful. He thought, oh, right, if I could just taste some of that sweet rice, and see how they make it. Then when I get back to Vrindavan, I can offer it to my Gopal deity. And then he thought, oh, I'm such a rascal, I shouldn't want to taste, trying to enjoy the Lord's offering. And he went to the marketplace there in the evening, and all the stalls in the marketplace were empty. The vendors had gone home for the night. And he sat there chanting. Meanwhile, the pujari of Gopinath had a dream. And in that dream, Gopinath spoke to him and said, I have taken 2 pots of this sweet rice and I hid it behind my cloth on the altar, and you did not see. Now I want you to wake up and go get that sweet rice and give it to that sannyasi Madhavendra Puri who was passing through town. And the pujari woke up, he's like, wow. So he went to the altar and he looked, and there he saw the 2 pots of sweet rice. Wow, that was a far out dream. It was true. So he mopped up the place where the sweet rice had been kept, and then he went to the marketplace, calling out, will the sannyasi Madhavendra Puri please come out? Gopinath has brought some sweet rice for you. So Madhavendra Puri came out from the booth where he was chanting, and the pujari gave it to him and told him the story, how he had the dream. The deity woke him up to come get the sweet rice. And Madhavendra Puri tasted that sweet rice. He drank it all, and then he broke the clay pot into little tiny pieces and kept it in his cloth. And he thought, I better get out of here, because as soon as the word spreads through town that the deity stole the sweet rice from me, I'm going to be famous and everyone's going to, be bothering me. So I get out of town as fast as I can, which he did. Then he went to Jagannath Puri and he secured the sandalwood pulp, or the sandalwood, and he had 2 assistants with him who he paid their salaries to help him carry the sandalwood, to take it all the way back to Vrindavan. Another 1,000 miles, right? Long way, long, arduous journey, dangerous journey. Many dacoits, tax collectors, Muslim, boatmen, so many difficulties. And when he got back to the Gopinath temple in Remuna, then he went to the temple and he saw the deity and they chanted and danced. And then he went to take rest. He had another dream. This time the Gopinath deity spoke to him. He said, I am none different from Gopal in Vrindavan. So you can arrange to have the sandalwood ground into pulp and applied to my body here in Remuna, and Gopal in Vrindavan will feel the relief also. And he woke up from that dream like, wow. So he engaged those 2 brahmanas in grinding the sandalwood into the pulp and mixed with water, and they grind it. Just like you take the tilak and mix it with water. And so that service was offered to Gopinath, who had stolen the sweet rice for him. And he was relieved of the burden of having to take the sandalwood all the way back to Vrindavan. So this is Madhavendra Puri. One of his disciples was named Ishwara Puri, and it was Ishwara Puri who was the initiating spiritual master of Lord Chaitanya himself. And it is also said that Nityananda Prabhu was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. So Madhavendra Puri is a very important person in our sampradaya. And it is said that it is he, Madhavendra Puri, who introduced the conjugal worship of Radha Krishna in love, which is called Prema, Krishna Prema. He introduced that into our sampradaya. Before, the deity of Krishna was worshipped alone, but beginning from Madhavendra Puri, Radha Krishna was worshipped since that time, and we are worshipping Radha Krishna today. We have Sri Sri Radha Madhava being worshipped like this. So this is some of the history, and these are some of the glories of Sri Madhvacharya and his succession, to which we belong. Being the followers of Srila Prabhupada, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and going back to the disciplic descendants of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, like the six Goswamis, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Narottam Das Thakur, all these persons in our disciplic succession. And we are all a huge debt to Srimad Vacharya, the great Vaishnava preacher. All right, so we'll stop here. Questions, comments, realizations? All right. Thank you all very much. Srimad Vacharya ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.